Okay, this is just going to be a quick little video on, or not so quick video on the metacognitive strategies, things I'm thinking when I answer these questions. Obviously, when you have to answer this question, you need to just know what the SI units are for various quantities. So this is something you'll just need to know. The difference between scalar and vector quantities, is one, obviously, the vector has direction and magnitude, whereas the scalar only has a magnitude. Ductility, sometimes you'll get that confused with malleability. Malleability is the ability to hammer it into a sheet. Ductility is drawing into a wire. If something is ductile, you can draw it into a wire. Example of a mechanical property. We discussed this when we were talking about materials, and we talked about two little ways of remembering all the mechanical properties. And I use this little thing here. She's PM, she's the Prime Minister, defend the Northern Territory. So this comes out to, and you need to remember this, is strength, hardness, elasticity, stiffness, plasticity, malleability, ductility, fatigue, and the NT, because little subscript T is notch, toughness. So you need to remember that and what each one of those actually means. And you want to study that. If you want to remember all the properties in general, you've got this little way of remembering it here, which is me, mac, pet. Mechanical, magnetic, so mechanical properties, magnetic properties, chemical properties, physical properties, electrical properties, and thermal properties. So they're all the different types of properties, and of course mechanical is the one you deal with quite often. So we know, if you're looking for an example of mechanical property, fatigue, because fatigue is in that little way of remembering the mechanical properties. Thick, dark, continuous lines are used to show, and this is for drawing resources on exchange, and it's visible outlines. Toughness. Once again, toughness, we talked about notch toughness. It's the ability to withstand an impact force, as opposed to strength, which is the ability to withstand a load of a particular type. Impact force, withstanding impact force is about toughness. Identify the property not characteristic of metals. We know that metals tend to be malleable, you can bend them. We know that they're shiny. We know that they're usually solid at room temperature. The only exception, of course, to that is mercury, which is why they say usually. And insulation is something that is not a characteristic of metals, okay? They actually conduct heat and electricity well. Thermoset polymers exhibit the following primary types of bonds. You need to go back to your notes on thermosetting polymers and the thermoplastics as well, and its covalent bonds is the primary type of bonds, both cross-linked and in between the actual monomers that make up the polymer. The velocity ratio of a pulley system is, now for this one here, in the past I have told you can count the number of pulleys, and 9 times out of 10 you can either count the number of pulleys or the number of ropes, but sometimes you might have a pulley changing the direction that you're applying the force that doesn't actually offer a mechanical advantage, which is why you should always count the ropes between the fixed block of pulleys and the unfixed block, the swinging block of pulleys. If you count that number of ropes, you're always going to end up with that velocity ratio. So this is the most correct answer, found by counting the number of ropes supporting the lower block. And we'll look at that when we do the bigger question on that later in this paper. Which of the following statements is correct for a second class lever? So you need to know the classes of lever, and you know that with the classes of lever, class 1 has the fulcrum or the pivot point in the center, and then you work out what each class is by what's in the center. So fulcrum in the center is class 1. If you have the load in the center, you have a class 2, and if you have the effort in the center, you have a class 3. So class 1, seesaw; class 2, wheelbarrow; class 3, your standard stapler. So they're asking here, which of the following statements is correct for a second class lever? The load arm moves further than the effort arm. This would be a disadvantage, so that would be for a class 3. The effort arm moves further than the load arm. Yes, that is true, because your effort arm is always going to be longer than your load arm because of the way the actual lever is set up, and the fulcrum is positioned between the effort and the load arm. That's a class 1. So you need to know your simple levers really, really well and understand how how mechanical advantage happens and what the characteristics of each one is. Go and study. So that is all of the stuff you need to know to answer, or some of the things I thought about when I was answering the multiple choice. I'll do another video for the next section of this examination.